When I took my children to the movies when they were little, I would see it as an opportunity for a 1.5 hour nap. So I've never actually made it to the end of a children's film because the minute I sat down in the movie house, I would pass out. That said, I thought I was going to sleep through the Odyssey. I made it 2 minutes into some shut-eye and then woke up and thoroughly enjoyed it. But I did think the actors had no relationship to each other, particularly Tom Holland, who I feel is perfect for the Lord of the Rings. He should be only ever playing Frodo. He's short and he's elfin. He's like the poor man's British version of Timothée Chalamet.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Obsessed the Podcast, where we guide you through all the TV shows, movies, and pop culture nonsense that we think is unmissable. And today I thought we'd have a big summer catch-up for many reasons, including the fact that it's about 4,000 degrees outside and going out feels like stepping directly into Satan's armpit. So the only logical thing to do is to stay inside in the air conditioning, watching TV shows and movies. And as you can tell from my background, I am not in our podcast studio. I'm actually at the beach on vacation. So I'm very grateful that our guest has agreed to join us today to talk about all the things we're obsessed with. I think you know her well. It is Joanna Coles, our Chief Content Officer, our podcast maven, our Wizard of Pods, if you will. Hi, Joanna. How are you?
Kevin, I'm so excited I get to do this. One of the great privileges of my job is to get to talk to you about what I should be watching and going to see. And I'm very excited to get your recommendations so that when I'm flying back and forth to the UK this summer, I know what to watch and there won't be a moment wasted.
Well, I'm very glad to be of service. I'm glad you're chatting with me. I think one of the coolest things about this summer is the fact that we're finally back at a place where there are at least a few things where everyone has seen it, everyone is watching it and talking about it. We haven't had that sort of monoculture in a while. And I saw that this summer with the Odyssey, first of all. That was, I think, the biggest thing that turns out everyone has an opinion on. We're all suddenly experts on Homer. Who knew?
Who knew? Who knew? And I have so many thoughts on this, Kevin. I'm very curious about your thoughts. I obviously have thoughts too.
I have many thoughts. One, just from a pure cinema standpoint, it was so much fun to go to the movie theater that opening weekend and have it be packed with people who are so excited to see it. You know, chowing down on popcorn, drinking the soda. You know, when we left the theater, everyone was buzzing and, you know, gossiping about their opinions and all that. That kind of experience only happens once in a while these days. So I really enjoyed that. I also enjoyed, in a more sinister way, the conversation that it started, the way that everyone has these extreme opinions, and so many of them are bad, and so many of them are happening from people even before they saw the film. You know, we had the MAGA reaction. We had the expert Emily Wilson giving her take, which then incited this sort of like metastasized awfulness of everyone else offering their own expert opinions. I'm curious what you thought when you saw it.
Well, first of all, I agree with you that there's almost nothing that one can have one conversation about anymore with people other than politics, and that can end up, you know, in a bad way.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed the fact that there was one big spectacle that almost everybody I knew went to see, including my kids, you know, one of whom is living in France at this point, one of whom is living in DC. They'd both seen it. I went to see it. I love Christopher Nolan. I love him as a director. He's British, so I'm going to claim him. But also, I love the fact that he knows how to fill the screen. And actually, it was interesting because I think the film was released the same weekend or possibly the week after The Invite, the Olivia Wilde movie with Penelope Cruz. And the friend I'd suggested, I quite wanted to see it, and so I suggested it. And the friend was like, no, I'm not going to go and see that at the movies. That's a television movie. Why on earth would I want to go and see that on a big screen? Whereas The Odyssey, of course you have to see it on a big screen. You cannot Netflix and chill this movie. You have to have the collective experience of a gigantic spectacle. That said, and I loved it, and I was exhausted. The night I went to see it, I was exhausted. I thought, I'm going to sleep through this, but it doesn't matter.
You do have to like rest up before you see this. So you need to take a nap beforehand, chug a Red Bull. It's a commitment to go watch this.
It's a commitment, and yet, and so I will confess, the first first 2 minutes, I closed my eyes and thought, okay, I'm gonna get a nap in here, which is what I used to do with my children. When I took my children to the movies, Kevin, when they were little, I would see it as an opportunity for a 1.5 hour nap. So I've never actually seen the various Toy Stories. I know there's Toy Story 5, which we've got on our list to discuss, but I've never actually made it to the end of a children's film. I never got through Monsters, Inc. because the minute I sat down in the movie house, I would pass out with fatigue. However, that said, I thought I was going to sleep through the Odyssey. I made it 2 minutes into some shut-eye and then woke up and thoroughly enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I do have things, though. I did think it was overcast. It was almost as if they tried to select someone that would appeal to absolutely everybody in every demographic without the chemistry merging on screen.
It got to a point where it almost felt to me like how 30 Rock used to do these parody movies, sort of making fun of how Hollywood would imagine the way a movie should be. And the fact that they're like, what can we do? Let's cast every famous person that is existing right now, put them in this 3.5 hour movie directed by Christopher Nolan, and it'll be based on a Hallmark home from centuries ago. Like, that to me is almost like a parody of what Hollywood would be doing. And then here we are with it in reality.
I think that's a little unfair to Christopher Nolan, actually, although I will say that the film has unleashed the most pompous of people pontificating about, the Odyssey and did they get it right and was Circe really like that? And you're just like, oh, for goodness sake, he's allowed to do whatever he wants with it. This is Christopher Nolan. He's created the biggest spectacle of the summer. It's magnificent. Leave aside your sort of literary criticism and your textual exegesis. We don't need that here. It's like, is it a movie or not? Does it work as a movie? It totally works as a movie. But I did think the cast, the characters or the actors had no relationship to each other. That's what I thought was odd. And particularly Tom Holland, who I feel is perfect for the Lord of the Rings. He should be only ever playing Frodo.
Is that because he's short?
He's short and he's elfin. He's like unfortunately, the poor man's British version of Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got that sort of triangle little face. He should be playing a goblin, directed by Peter Jackson, in the outer shores of New Zealand. He shouldn't be in the big, sexy summer movie. And even Matt Damon, I thought, could have been sexed up a bit.
Oh, I thought he looked the best he's looked in such a long time, and I thought they really did a purposeful job of showing off his physique and sort of leering at it in several of those moments. I was like, oh, they made Matt Damon way sexier than I expected in the Odyssey.
How interesting, Kevin. I had a different perspective, which was, Matt Damon's getting old.
Yeah,
he will forever, for me, be the boy in Good Will Hunting. The smart but misunderstood boy. And here, I wasn't absolutely sure about him, but it doesn't really matter because he's such a movie star and he's so watchable. And as somebody pointed out, possibly in the Daily Beast, Matt Damon is just trying to get home wherever he is. He's in space. He's just trying to get home. He's trapped on Mars. He's just trying to get home. He's wherever he is. He's just trying to get home. Matt, come home. Come home, Matt.
There was a shot of him on the beach with Charlize Theron that just took my breath away. And I know a lot of people have opinions about that sequence because, all of a sudden, in this epic, very grueling, very dark and violent film, we arrive at what looks like a perfume commercial with, the wind perfectly billowing Charlize's hair, and she's so sun-kissed, and Matt Damon, again, in my opinion, looked so good. I wonder what you thought about that sequence and if it worked, because I think that was the one that people had the most polarized opinions of.
Well, if I were Matt Damon, I would have just stayed with Charlize Theron. It sounded fantastic. They were just having endless sex for 7 years. What more does anybody want? And then that weird lotus leaf thing. I mean, I could watch Charlize Theron forever. I find her so compelling. That those two really are movie stars in a world where there's a national shortage of movie stars. they both bring real star quality. When anyone else is on the screen, you can't look at them. You only want to look at them.
Yeah.
I find her like Michelle Pfeiffer. I just want to watch her hair. I need to watch every tendril and see what it's doing. I actually thought that was quite a difficult part of the story for Christopher Nolan to navigate, because clearly it's a family movie. They want everybody to go together. They want it to appeal to as big an audience as it possibly could. And actually the idea of being trapped as a sex slave on an island for 7 years when you're the guy is quite interesting, and it's probably another breakout movie on its own. So I felt that whole part of the movie was underplayed. It was like, oh, well, I've been eating lotus flowers for the last 7 years. Now I've stopped eating them. I'm coming out of my drugged haze, and I realized, despite the fact I'm with Charlize Theron, I must get home. It didn't. But you know, who doesn't want to watch the two of them romping around on a beach? I would have liked more romping.
Well, that's the thing that I think didn't land. There were parts of it that tried to portray it almost as romantic, what she was doing, whereas I think I would have enjoyed it being a bit more sinister, a bit more dark, and that goes for both the motivation for what she was doing and the circumstance of him being a sex slave, but also, like you were saying, like, show us some of the fun, so some of the things that he's beginning to enjoy while under her power.
Right, so she's essentially Kathy Bates in Misery. And yet he's kind of, and then, you know, she's like, you know what, I'm going to stop drugging you and you can go now. So, yeah. But listen, it's Charlize Theron, it's Matt Damon. What's not to love? Let's not be picky.
If you're a parent, you've probably wondered whether your kids are actually getting the nutrition they need. With so many ultra-processed foods out there, it's no surprise that a lot of parents are looking more closely at what's in the products they're giving their kids. That's one of the reasons Hiya has gotten so much attention. Hiya skips the sugar and artificial additives you'll find in a lot of kids' vitamins. Instead, their chewable multivitamin is made with a blend of 12 organic fruits and vegetables, plus 15 essential vitamins and minerals. It's also non-GMO, vegan, dairy-free, allergy-free, gelatin-free, nut-free, and third-party tested for purity. You can now find Hiya in person at Target stores nationwide, or order directly from their website with a special deal we've worked out just for you. Receive 50% off your first order on any of their products. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/OTP. This deal is not available on their regular website. Go to hiyahealth.com/OTP and get your kids the full body support they deserve. You mentioned the movie being overcast earlier, and I think that's an interesting conversation too, because so much of the discourse around the Odyssey that happened was before anyone had seen it, and it was just about the casting, this sort of knee-jerk reaction that seems to always happen these days where something is woke. Like, they saw the cast list for this and saw that Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy, that Elliot Page was being cast in this, and the immediate reaction was for there to be a MAGA meltdown, for there to be this, you know, insufferable conversation about how modern progressive culture is ruining everything great because this is the way they cast the film. And I'm curious if you think that the film itself, after watching those performances, contradicted and sort of shut up those, in my opinion, annoying complaints.
Yeah, I actually thought it was sort of genius casting to have Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy, and actually what was really shocking were the scars on her face. So I thought that was brilliant, and also utterly plausible that she seemed so incredibly different from everybody else that they would fall in love with her as this incredibly intriguing woman. And the Elliot Page, I didn't really notice, actually. I mean, I think that the film, the spectacle of the film and the fluidity of the film, I think somehow protects itself from these sort of MAGA criticisms. I mean, Elliot Page seemed to be every bit the boy that he was in the movie, and Lupita I thought was brilliantly cast. Because also, what do you do if it's really the face that launched 1,000 ships? Who on earth do you cast for that? So you cast a beautiful black woman, an Oscar winner, to sort of show how different she was from everybody else in the town.
Yeah, and Lupita Nyong'o has, I think, one of the unique abilities of big stars these days to actually harness an energy and a magnetism in silent moments that would portray that kind of extreme power and attraction, just the sort of irresistibility that Helen of Troy needs to have. In those scenes, you see this simmering energy that's more explosive than any big reaction or big monologue or what have you could have had. And I think only she's in rare company of actresses that I think could have pulled that kind of magnetism off.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're just stuck with having to put in a very, very classically, I guess, sort of pretty blonde girl that will inevitably be an anticlimax. Lupita was, I think, a really smart piece of casting. She was the opposite of Tom Holland in a way. And she's also a movie star that when she's on the screen, you can't really look at anybody else. She just commands that attention.
Yeah. Well, I am curious to talk about, or I'm excited to talk about the real biggest movie this summer, which has done a bigger box office than even the Odyssey, which is Spider-Man, which I know you haven't seen. I've seen it and I loved it. I am not a Marvel person and I am not a superhero movie person. I actually kind of loathe those movies. But there's something about the Spider-Man films that across all three versions, the Tobey Maguire version, Andrew Garfield's, now Tom Holland's version, I like those films for some reason, and I've never been able to sort of put my finger on it. But what I want to talk to you about is the fact that, Tom Holland now, with also Zendaya by his side, is kind of the biggest version of a movie star that we have. He has these two back-to-back massive hits. He's more than $1 billion man at the box office at this moment. He's married to one of the hottest A-listers there is with Zendaya, acting with her in these films. What do you think of his viability as this sort of successor to the mantle of Hollywood's biggest movie star?
Well, first of all, Zendaya was completely underused in the Odyssey, right? She looked as perplexed as we were about what am I doing here, I thought. And she didn't have any makeup on. So I almost felt like, oh, the makeup department's not bothering because they know she doesn't have much of a role. And then every now and then she would sort of appear. It was strange. I suspect for Tom Holland, he's had enormous luck in being in two great vehicles for him this summer. Listen, I am the mother of two boys. I have never sat through or never knowingly sat through a Spider-Man movie or a Batman movie. The minute those things come on, either at home or in the movies, I pass out. I see it as an opportunity to go to sleep. So I really can't comment on him in Spider-Man at all. But these vehicles are bigger than the stars, and I don't think Tom has yet had a role where he plays either a proper romantic lead or a really character-driven movie. He's playing tropes.
Yeah. I think what a lot of people are waiting for from him in the way that, like Tom Cruise had all these franchises, but he's proved himself as an amazing actor. Same with Brad Pitt, Christian Bale with Batman movies. These are all people who have led these massive blockbusters, but also are Oscar nominees. And I think Tom Holland hasn't done that yet, which is why I'm really curious about what's been announced as his next project, which is he's going to play Fred Astaire in a Fred Astaire biopic. And I think that's clearly being positioned as Tom Holland's big Oscar gambit, which is something he hasn't proved himself capable of doing yet. But he has proved himself capable of captivating us with his dancing, which he did in that amazing Umbrella karaoke video. He was on stage in the West End as Billy Elliot. So I think there actually is potential for him to sort of harness that fascination with his dancing skills and see if that will translate into something more impressive for him on the acting side, playing Fred Astaire.
I think it just gives him a bit more range, right? What we haven't seen from Tom Holland yet is real emotional range. We've seen him playing essentially action heroes. And it slightly reminds me of Sam Rockwell, actually, who played in Fosse when he did that series. I know this is a movie, and Sam Rockwell played Bob Fosse in the Fox show, FX show, actually.
Yeah, Fosse Verdon.
Yeah, Fosse Verdon, thank you. That was a good unexpected casting for Sam Rockwell, who's, since popped up in White Lotus. I mean, fantastically good in the last series of White Lotus. So I hope that we see a different version of Tom Holland. I'm looking forward to being persuaded that he is the new movie star of his generation, that he can match Timothée Chalamet step for step.
And we've talked before about how much we really miss and crave the Hollywood glamour of those big movie stars from the past. And a lot of that came from the big couples, the Brad and the Angelinas, the Tom and Nicole, and the sort of hysteria that surrounded that, and the beauty and the glamour, and the just sort of like putting them on a pedestal and worshiping them on magazine covers and in tabloids and on red carpets and all of that. We've been starved for that, I think. And people are positioning Tom and Zendaya as that second coming of that kind of, or at least the new generation of that, and how they navigate that with all that we do online and all we do with the internet and social media and everything like that. Do you think that there's a case to be made that they could be the couple that brings back that kind of Hollywood glamour that we miss?
No, because I think that moment in our culture has passed. To your point about there being so few big collective moments anymore, I think that's true of celebrity culture too. I think the influencer and the creator has taken over. I think our habits are now so disparate that it's very hard to find people who are interesting enough or frankly beautiful enough to pull people together. The thing that was so compelling about Angelina and Brad, for example, was that it was actually quite hard to imagine physically a more beautiful couple. And there are fewer sort of beautiful people around. And that's a good thing in terms of what we consider to be beautiful. I think our lens has opened, the aperture has opened, so it's a much wider group of people. But I don't think that Tom and Zendaya will be able to do that. I don't think there's the interest there. We didn't mention Robert Pattinson, whose teeth, I think, were the star of the Odyssey. Those sort of, and I'm hoping for Robert's sake they're not his real teeth and that they were fake teeth. But he's someone that there was an enormous amount of hope around at one point, especially because he was luminous in the Twilight movies. Those were children's movies I was able to stay awake for, actually. But I think Robert Pattinson and Suki Waterhouse are pretty compelling as a couple. And of course, you've got Bradley Cooper and Gigi Hadid, who are also very compelling as a couple together. But I don't think we'll ever get back to the sort of Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart level of glamour and coupledom. I think we know too much, and also they weren't constantly posting things about themselves. They kept themselves to themselves. It was glamorous, less was more, and now it's just more is more.
Well, that's interesting because I feel like the couple who thought they were going to be maybe that sort of next version of Bacall and Bogart were Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. They had this massive wedding. Their entire relationship was basically a press tour. Every moment of it was public and promoted and shared with all the fans. And there was when they were getting married in New York over the July 4th weekend, such an irritation that surrounded it. Everyone was so bugged by them and exhausted by it all. And it was so interesting because I think you would just imagine on paper what would be the 2026 version of the biggest couple in the world, or at least in the United States. It would be the pop princess with all the #1 hits and the most popular NFL star, our nation's biggest sport. And instead, they've just pissed everybody off.
Well, I think that was more to do with traffic, though, wasn't it? I mean, New Yorkers are very practical. If you're going to mess with the traffic, if I'm going to get delayed in my cab going up 6th Avenue, if there's going to be a crush of people on the subway, then you've lost me.
I mean, there was that irritation, which cracked me up because I'm like, oh, you're telling me I can't walk down 31st Street, the ugliest block in Manhattan? Like, I'll gladly be diverted. But I think beyond that irritation among New York locals, it was a lot of people were sort of baffled by how tacky the whole Madison Square Garden, over 1,000 guests, aspect of it was, how sort of like silly and thirsty it was to have all these A-list celebrities attend who had no connection or relationship whatsoever with either Taylor or Travis. I think all of that just seems so gross that it left a bad taste in fans' mouths about what could have otherwise, in an alternate universe, been the big fairy tale American royal wedding.
Well, I think what people want in a relationship like Travis and Kelce is some proof that it's real, and that if you have a small, intimate wedding, a bit like John Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bessette on a private island where they kept it completely away from the press, that's somehow more of an indication of an authentic relationship. I mean, of course, we're fed endless pictures of Travis and Taylor kissing, and all the things that come with what appears to be a real relationship. But it also feels like it could be quite transactional and something of a business relationship. And so the idea of hiring MSG, Madison Square Garden, for your wedding, I mean, it's literally the least romantic place on the planet. I mean, it's just... I found it puzzling that they did that. Why didn't they just hire a little island and go off and do something quiet and small for themselves? Because I guess they can't, because it's not real to them if they don't have an audience of 1,000 people applauding them in this moment.
And by contrast, that's what Tom and Zendaya did. They had a secret wedding, very small. There were not paparazzi photos that appeared everywhere. And I think the result is that, at least with the young Gen Z crowd, people seem to be rooting more for that couple, or at least more enamored by them and their seeming romance and privacy, than they are by the ostentatiousness of Taylor and Travis.
Well, clearly privacy is something that I think is much healthier for a relationship than putting everything out there in public. That's almost destined to fail.
Yeah. So one of the first times that you and I did one of these pop culture catch-ups, you explained to me that, in your days as a magazine editor, you found that there were two things that people were always wanting to hear about and talk about and read articles about, and that was money and sex.
Mm-hmm.
There is a movie out right now where sex is at the forefront that everyone is talking about, and everyone is kind of, again, angry about and pissed off about. It's this movie called One Night Only. It's positioned as a romantic comedy. It's more of just a straight-up comedy, where the idea is that one night a year in this sort of very conservative alternate universe version of America, which, let's face it, is actually not that alternate universe at this point, people who are single can only have premarital sex one night a year. So it's basically like The Purge, but with sex. But what happened after this movie came out this past weekend, or a few weekends ago, is that people realized that there was no sex in the movie. They went to go see this movie about the one day a year where everyone can be boning, and there was none of it. There was no nudity, very few sex scenes, and people felt ripped off because of that. And in the aftermath of this, Will Gluck, who was the director of the film, said that they had filmed all these nudity scenes and sex scenes, and he actually removed them all based on data he had seen about how the younger generation, Gen Z and younger, are turned off by seeing sex on screen and think that it's pointless, and he didn't want to alienate them. So he removed the sex from his movie, which was entirely about sex. How did we get here?
Yeah, that's fascinating. And also we know that Gen Z loves seeing sex on screen because they spend so much time on porn. So, and one of the reasons, or at least, one of the, I think one of the reasons, certainly propounded by Scott Galloway, is that one of the reasons that Gen Z complains they're not having sex anymore, and I'm not sure they even complain about it, but they have less sex, is because they have more screen sex. Also, it doesn't say very much for a director that he shoots everything and then decides not to use it because he hears the audience might not like it. I mean, the point of being a director is you put things out there to provoke the audience and give them things they don't think they want. And it turns out they might do. I'm very sort of mindful of how in my sort of 20s and 30s, there were big movies that were all around sex, like Indecent Proposal, Disclosure, Fatal Attraction. They were around obsessive sex and
Basic Instinct.
Basic Instinct. I mean, people who were obsessed about sex or a moment were people who were caught up with sex. And they were big, sexy movies. The people were attractive. There was always a sort of central dilemma. And the minute the movie was over, you would go out and have drinks or dinner and discuss it earnestly as if, you know, you too would be given the opportunity to sleep with Robert Redford for $1 million. And would you actually take this up? Yes. So I find the sort of discussion around obsession, I think it's kind of weird that Will Gluck left it out. And it's also just a weird conceit that this is what people would be allowed one night a year. It's sort of strange.
Yeah. It follows the format of the Purge movies where there's one night a year where you can commit murder. So I sort of understand that as like as a byproduct of those Hollywood board meetings where you're like, okay, this one thing works. How do we remix this? Let's do it's like this, but for this.
But what they should really have done is made it about married people. Married people were allowed to have sex one day a year. Because single people, I think, are probably out there having much more sex than married people, is my point.
Married couples are forced to have sex one day a year.
Yeah, that would be a provocative movie. You could have a ton of couples. You'd only be allowed to go and see it if you were married.
So as you mentioned, I know you're going back and forth a lot to Europe this summer, and I hope you have a great time. And I was hoping to give you a few recommendations of shows to watch while you're traveling that I think you would really enjoy, that I've been enjoying this summer, that I think everyone should be watching and binging because for different reasons, that they've been two of my favorites.
Please, I'm desperate. You were the man that recommended Baby Reindeer to me, so which still remains the most interesting thing I've watched for a long time. So I am up for all your suggestions.
I'm going to bilk that recommendation for my future employment forever. I think that I'm going to parlay that.
You were onto it very, very early. You saw an early... you saw it and you told everybody about it, and we were ahead on the Daily Beast on it, and you were completely right. What a riveting piece of television. For me, that's what television should do. That and Adolescence, both British, I should add, but provocative and about something. I want to watch something that's about something.
Yeah. So this first recommendation I think is going to be right up your alley in terms of that. It's called Furious. It's this TV show on Hulu that stars Emmy Rossum. We spoke on the Obsessed podcast in a recent episode with Liz Merriweather, who is the creator of it. She's known for creating things like New Girl, that comedy sitcom.
Yeah, with Zooey Deschanel. Yeah, whenever we put Zooey Deschanel on the cover of Marie Claire, it sold like gangbusters because people loved New Girl. They loved New Girl.
It's as popular now as ever, but I was fascinated that she's the person who created this new show, Furious, because it's really dark. It's really provocative. It's one of those shows that is hard to watch episode by episode, but is so riveting that you can't look away. You want to find out what happens. You want to sort of get more into the very twisted minds of the two sort of cat and mouse characters that are going on in the show. It stars Emmy Rossum from Shameless as a new FBI agent who becomes preoccupied with what she sees as a pattern of serial murders. And she's noticed that they're all sort of bad men, quote unquote, but she can't find the link is. But in the sort of parallel time that we're watching Emmy Rossum investigate these murders, we're seeing the serial killer herself. Who is a former victim of child trafficking, and she's going after both men that were a part of her horrible experience in that time, but also people who are implicating new rings of women and sort of exacerbating that horrible behavior.
So it's not a whodunit because we know who done it.
Right. It becomes more of it's about the chase. But what becomes really psychologically interesting is this idea of, is what this killer is doing justified? is this vengeance something that we can get behind while also still being so disturbed by and watching the violence? And there's also a background in Emmy Rossum's character where she starts to sort of empathize with what's going on with the serial killer. Um, so you're watching the chase, you're trying to watch this person be caught while also starting to empathize with her and root for her. It's sort of like Killing Eve in that way. Remember that show from a few years ago?
Yes, with Sandra Oh and Jodie Comer.
Sandra and Jodie Comer. It's a really dark, twisted show that is still kind of like invigorating to watch because of all these ideas that are swirling around.
Okay, all right, Furious. I'm jotting it down. I also love Emmy Rossum. Emmy Rossum we put on the cover of Marie Claire once, or was it Cosmo? Because someone had let us down at the last minute. Amy Rossum stepped into the breach. Emmy Rossum, not Amy Rossum, and sold very well. So I've always liked her.
She was so good on Shameless, and I mean, for my taste, she has one of the best heads of hair.
She has fabulous hair.
The big mane of curls, I'm obsessed with it.
Only to be matched by our producer, Rachel Passer, who also has a big, thick hair of curly hair.
Very true. Then the other one that I want to recommend, which I think is more of a risk for you because it's a bit more lighthearted and a bit sillier. It's kind of like the equivalent of a beach read as a TV show. It's called The 5-Star Weekend. It's that show that Jennifer Garner starred in that came out on Peacock a few weeks ago. It's like so many series that have happened in the last 5-6 years that are basically just like trying to do Big Little Lies again, which I stopped rolling my eyes at and started just welcoming. Like if the mystery is compelling enough, sure, let's go for it. But what I sort of loved about this series is that while it is typically going for the Big Little Lies audience, there isn't murder. You're not trying to like solve that kind of mystery or crime in this. You're just watching these 5 women who are all friends of Jennifer Garner's character from different stages of her life as they help her grieve her dead husband. And again, you're never wondering if the husband was killed. It's established in the very first episode that he died in a car crash and there's nothing nefarious about it. There are like twists and revelations and things that sort of keep you going from episode to episode, but there's nothing violent about it, which I thought was a breath of fresh air for this genre of TV shows, because I'm just so exhausted. As much as I just recommended this very violent and very grim TV show, Furious, this is the opposite of that. It's feel good in a way because it's so healing when you watch these women bond with each other. But it's also a show that honestly I put on a Saturday thinking I wasn't going to like it. And then 8 hours later, I had sat there and watched the entire thing in one sitting.
Oh, wow. Well, if that's your recommendation, that sounds like a perfect show to watch on a plane.
Yeah, I would say that is like the perfect plane TV show. You know how there's a genre of movies that I always call plane movies? Like the movies that I would never pay money to see in a theater. I probably wouldn't even pull up on a streaming service if I'm at home. But when I'm on a plane, there's something about that kind of movie I'm going to watch. And I think 5-Star Weekend is kind of a TV version of a plane movie.
Okay, it keeps surfacing in my algorithm and I've gone right past it. So I'm going to take both those, Furious and 5-Star Weekend, for my plane ride back to the UK. Can I recommend one thing to you, which I think is not the kind of thing you normally watch, but I found it very compelling, actually, was the Lockerbie drama on Netflix. I think it's called The Flight of Pan Am 103, and of course is about the Lockerbie story of when the Pan Am flight was bombed out of the sky and the plane fell upon the little Scottish village of Lockerbie. And it's about the incredible ups and downs of the investigation and the competitive nature of those investigations, and the Scots police and then London police and the FBI and the CIA all trying to compete with each other and hiding information from each other and then occasionally sharing information. So you get that whole drama, and then just the incredible drama and tragedy of this terrible event, and how the families were motivated to change airline security and to change the way that airlines behaved to passengers after something like this happens.
That's a great recommendation for me right now because I'm at the beach with my family, and that sounds like such a great thing to watch, like with my parents after all the kids go to bed. And I think my brother will really like that. I think that's a kind of like has a cross section appeal. I think it's when it's so hard to always agree on something to watch as a family. I think that's something that we could, at least the grown-ups, all watch together.
Yeah, and it's a 6-parter, and it's really a sort of character drama of the people in charge of the investigation, how they solve the riddle of who put the bomb on the plane, where and how and why. And of course, it's based on a terrible tragedy in real life. But I found it a very compelling series.
Yeah, so it's going to be really refreshing to watch after spending long afternoons and evenings watching Bluey and Cocomelon.
Yes, I don't envy you that.
But I want to thank you for doing this for many reasons, including I got to kick my family out of the house for a few hours and have peace and quiet for the first time in a few days. So that's been really lovely. But also, I just always really enjoy chatting with you about this kind of stuff. So thanks so much.
And Kevin, likewise, and I'm excited to come back in the fall and hear what shows we'll be watching before the holidays, because I'm always in need of stimulation and good ideas, and you have both.
Awesome. Well, it'll be a date in a few months. Thanks so much, Joanna. That was so much fun talking to you. I could hear you give your opinion about Tom Holland for days. It was cracking me up. And now we want to hear from you. Let us know what you think. Do you think Tom Holland is our next great movie star? Did you watch the Odyssey? Did you like Spider-Man? And more than that, let me know what your favorite thing this summer is. Your favorite TV show, your favorite movie. Please leave a comment. And as always, please subscribe to us on YouTube at The Obsessed channel. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like me, subscribe to my Substack at obsessed.substack.com. Thank you to our producer, Rachel Passer, and we'll see you next time.